Okay, so what I'm doing at the moment, I've added a little bit of the actual olive drab, which is obviously with the Valera a very, very browny colour. Thinned it quite a lot, and I'm adding it 50-50 with that olive green that we were using anyway, because what I'm trying to do is make a sort of a dirtier, faded look to that green, if you like. Now, it's got to be watery because we want this to blend, so make sure you push it all out. But as you can probably see down here, it's certainly more of a brown colour. There we go, it's sort of coming through now, it's a darky green. So if we bring our helicopter back here, like so, then all we're going to do, literally, is going to pop round everywhere. I'm just picking out all the panels like we do on an aircraft. So you know we go round and you pick out the centres and leave the outside so it's darker. Basically, we're going to do just the same with this. So we'll start on the bottom, because it's always easier, because there's always bigger areas down under there. And then all we're going to do, very random, we're not going to be picking out exact panels, but we're just going to roughly whip this all around everywhere and just go in between those rivets. I know I'm doing this quite quick, but we're a very, very thin mix, so you probably won't be able to see that much on there as we do this, but all this will do, it will just give it that slightly different tone. And just pick out big panels, things like that, you know, around access doors, all those little areas where, you know, it's got a bigger sort of area, perhaps little walkways, perhaps where it gets a little bit more dirty, things like that. Spines on tails are also a good area. And we're just trying to give this a different shade. We're not trying to, you know, I know sometimes with the aircraft we get in there and really change it. With this, we're not trying to desperately change it, we're just trying to make a little difference. Because it's going to be all these little differences, just running out of air here, all these little differences, the subtleness, will make this work a lot more than it will do if you're just going in there quite heavy. As I say, you probably won't be able to see this, which is a bit of a shame. But it'd be one of those things that will stand out a lot better with the naked eye than it would doing it this way anyway. But this is just part one, if you like, just trying to change the tone just a little, as we were saying. And then what we do our same things we do the other, you know, where we actually just go round everywhere. So same thing, we're just going to literally pop round and just randomly dust this all over just to help blend it in again. So there we go, just like that. And there we go, we're getting that sort of, it's shown on the camera, but it's the darker colour. So there we go, we've got that done. And then what we're going to do, we're going to come back again with a little bit more of the drab. Okay, 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 or 6 big drops there into that same colour, and we're going to darken it again. Good mix again. It's actually not as dark as I'd like. The other 2 drops going in. And 3. Okay, just going to get this to darken up just a bit. Remember to blow through your colour. So there we go. And you can hear the pressure probably a little bit different. It's a little bit heavier. Okay, same thing again. Just trying to randomly pick out areas without hanging around too much. Remember your leading edge and trailing edge of those little pylons as well. There we go. same thing, bit of a blow, just your last couple of passes all over. And there we go, with something like that. And we're getting that sort of Apache greenness about it. Now we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to come back with some post shading just to pick out all the little areas. So what we're going to do, we're going to clean out the airbrush, give it a nice good clean, make sure everything's okay, and then we're going to come back with a mixture of the actual black and the dark green to do the post shading with. Okay, so that's all done now. As you can see there, if you see, you get the sort of tonal changes running down that we've done all over it. Now the next thing we want to do is basically dry brushing. Helicopter attack helicopters such as this, it's that twofold thing. They're halfway obviously between a tank and then obviously a aircraft. Now by what I mean is, because they have large rivets, large chunks, they pick up that type of weathering which armour gets. Also, these aircraft, you know, they don't tend to operate from perhaps airfields as such. They're at forward bases, which are normally improvised, very dirt, you know, it might be just on grass, metal sheeting, but certainly they're going to get dirty, very, very dirty, unlike aircraft coming out of proper airfields and with maintenance. Obviously, the other thing as well, when they're armed and fueled, it's all done very quickly, you know, to get them back up and flying as quick as they can. So we're going to basically weather it the same way as what we do armour. Now, if you remember when we did the Abrams, we did a wash right the way over, and then we did dry brushing. So what's what we're basically going to do here? Obviously, we have to pick our colour for what we're going to do. So in this case, what we're going to actually have is a lightened green. So what we'll do, we'll get our a paint top here. We'll get some of the base colour green that we've been using here, which is the olive green. Okay, quite a bit in there. Okay, they've got some Tamiya flat white. Okay, so we're just going to grab a big brush full of that. So it's about 50-50 mix. Okay, and then we're going to make it up, and as you can see, it's quite a light colour there, and in fact I think that's just a little bit too light for what I'm liking. So like everything, we'll add a couple more drops onto there. That's more like it. Now it's got to be a contrast, obviously you want it to be quite a light colour, but obviously we don't want too light. Okay, we're taking a couple of drops of thinners, just a few drops in there. Okay, then we'll just mix some more. Okay, then we want to knock most of this all off, and obviously we want to get rid of that white we've got on the brush to start with. Loading up the brush, dry brush it all off, starting somewhere which isn't very noticeable. Okay, so we'll do it on the underside for this start. Okay, then we're just going to brush right the way. Now, I don't know how well you're going to see that, but hopefully you can see the rivets are lightening up very, very nicely. And we're just trying to really lighten it all up. So just be careful, we don't want too much on there to go round. But we're just lightening up all these areas. So if I just get in here. Okay, just put down here. And there we go. I don't know how well you can see that there around this front area, but we've got a few brush marks, and why that is, it's my mistake. There's too much brush at the paint at the top of the brush. We need to get that off, but that's not a problem because we'll just wear all that in. So we're just going to work absolutely everywhere. Start your brushing nice and light to start with. And then as you get the paint works off the brush and you haven't got much on there, and then just add to it. And basically run around absolutely everywhere you like with it, because it's going to do two things. One, it's going to give that nice dusty look. Also, it's going to give a little bit of shadowing and a little bit of fading to everything that you touch. So I'm just going to carry on now and just keep dry brushing absolutely everything. Okay, so I don't know how well you can actually see that, but I'm very happy with that. You've got the riveting you can see now, and it's worked with the post shading and the pre-shading and the lightening. So now we can basically give it a wash if we want, or we could just do it with pastels. It's not necessarily important to go for a wash at this point. And certainly I think it will help out, and it will bring a few things to area with life. Like, we want to do this effect that the helicopters would get where they've had a wash down and things like that. So that will certainly help out. But for the moment, we're just going to let that totally dry. At the same time, I've done the missile pylons and the weapons themselves as well. They've had a dry brush, so it all just basically works together. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the decals on there. Now the trouble with these are Academy decals. They're very thick, very brittle, and they shatter and they're horrible, but we've used them anyway. They've gone on all okay roughly, with lots of micro set and sol to get them to blend in. We had a few bits of silvering, so we've gone around everywhere. So what I'm going to do now is give this 2 or 3 really heavy coats of Johnson's clear. Okay, so we've got our clear. We're going to spray this, give this a couple of really good heavy coats. Now, if I just load this up quickly, so we're just going to pull this straight into the colour cup, just like that. Let's put that back in the holder. I just want to show you something. Normally, we get these marks. Here's how well you can see it. Might be better if I zoom you in. We get these marks around here, these watermarks. You remember, and what happens is, this is a good example just down here. And obviously, if you catch them in the light, it will look a bit better. Normally what we do is remove them, but we want to keep these because these are great weathering effects on helicopters, because it works the same with armour. And as you can see, we've got lots of silvering on here with these decals, so we need to really, well, it's not silvering, it's just the shiniest because they're very thick. So we need to cover that up, so it's going to take 2 or 3 good coats of Future to get that on. So if we just get that on to go. Protect the old cutting mat for a moment. Okay, it's filling it everywhere. Okay, we'll start on the bottom. Alright, and we're just giving it quite a heavy coat all over. We're not massively concerned about how this goes on, it's just got to be thick, because we need to blend those decals in. Sorry, if I just bring you out a bit, you might be able to see a bit better. We need to blend those decals in. Whoops. All over, and then we can get on with some heavy weathering. But because the decals are very, very thick, we need to actually give it lots and lots of Future. So we're giving it a big, thick, heavy coat. We're going to let it dry naturally, like that, and hopefully it'll start to cover up the decals on there. Then we can come back again and give it another heavy coat, and probably 3 heavy coats, and then we can come back with a nice satin coat all over. And hopefully that will blend in those decals, and so they won't look as quite so shiny and thick and brittle, and it will just blend them all in nicely. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a few bits and pieces going on here. I've installed the gun underneath, pretty straightforward. Just have a look at your references and check out how it goes in. It can be a bit of a handful, and it's really fiddly. Because it is fiddly, it's quite hard to show you, you know what I mean, if you get down there. So anyway, that's on. That's not on, it's just there. Rubber wheels on. Okay, what I actually did, if I can slip one of these off without busting them off again. It says just peeling it off because he almost broke them trying to get them on. Okay, all I actually did around here, this area of the hub itself, as you can see, it's got little bits that poke out. I went round and cut them all off, and it makes the tyre easier to get on. Now these tyres are actually quite firm, they're quite hard, they're not soft and rubbery, which is quite nice because you can actually sand them. So what I did was went around the entire tyre and just scuffed it all off. And now that that's got most of that rim taken off round there, it actually sits on there, and as you say, no having to paint wheels and bits and pieces like that. So that's all done. It's had 3 coats of clear on there just to get those decals to all sit in and marry in on there quite nicely. So that's done. Okay, the rotor head itself is done as well. We've actually got this together now, and we put it all in. All I've done, dry brushed grey, picked out little bits of silver on the top, and also at the same time I've also done the actual shaft, the spindle, which is going to fit down nicely into here with any luck. And then the rotor head will just sit on the top, just like that, giving us our classic sort of Apache looking helicopter. So we'll leave that off for the moment. Same as I've actually done the tail rotor, exactly the same, we just put it together as we did earlier, sprayed it all black, just went round and dry brushed it, and obviously don't forget they don't cross over, they're actually that type of shape. The other thing to do there. Painted and decaled all the Hellfire missiles. There again, the decals on this kit are terrible, they're very thick. Literally you touch them, they shatter. Got around that a little bit, put a couple of drops of microsalt in the water where the decals were floating. That type sort of take care of that problem. Okay, apart from leaving paint in the airbrush overnight to go rock hard and having to get that out a minute ago, we're all doing very well. What we're going to do now is give this a couple of coats of flat. Now I'm going to give the aircraft one coat just as it is for the moment, and then I'm going to come back, put it all together and then give it another coat. The reason for that is, in a minute we're going to do some pastel weathering. Okay, so now the flat coat is on and totally dry. We've eliminated a lot of the silvering and it's all sort of all in there if you like. It's still quite a shiny. We're going to really deaden this down a bit later on. But what we can do now, we can give this a wash. So very straightforward, we're just going to give this a dark grey wash all over, just as I do anything else. The difference being with this, when we come to take it off, we're going to have to be a little bit more careful how we take it off, because we don't want the grey necessarily being in certain areas, but that's their things as I'll show you as we go. So if we just grab a brush, I did have a nice decent soft brush here somewhere, that'll do, and all we'll do, same way as we do absolutely everything else, we're just going to paint this on. Now this is going over that flat coat, but that flat coat that we put down isn't going to be quite as flat as you like. It's almost gone like a satin because we went over quite a heavy coat before. Now what this is going to do, it's going to do two things. Firstly, it's obviously going to go in those nice recessed panel lines, which there isn't a great deal of, to be honest. But also what it's going to do, it's going to stick to the actual rivets all over this thing. So what we're actually going to end up with is a nice little shadowing effect on all of those rivets, which we're after, and it'll just give another little bit of the depth because it'll work well with the actual the dry brushing we did all over to lighten up those rivets, so it'll make them pop right out. So if we just do this tail, and I'll carry on and get everywhere else done. Okay, so that's the wash basically all dry. There's a few little wet spots around there, but we can work with those. I'm not worried about that. Whilst that was drying as well, I've actually put the Hellfire missiles onto their quad racks there. So shortly when this is all done, we can come back and then get those fitted as well. So we're getting into the sort of latter stages, so now we can play with the weathering, if you like. So what we're going to do, usual thing, we're just cutting our kitchen towel up into squares. And the same way, moisten, and then just give it a nice rub round everywhere. Now remember, this is with the wash. If you're using, obviously my wash, the Pro Modelers wash, just rub it. Don't lick it and moisten it to take it off and things like that, perhaps you would do normally, because we want this to be quite a weathered, quite a dirty type of helicopter. So what we want to do is give it that dusty sort of look that's going on, because what we're going to do with this one, we're going to come around afterwards and spray some green and some dirt around on top of the actual wash, so it'll give it a real dirty, grimy look. Well, you are going to have to moisten it just a little bit, just for real stubborn areas, because you just want a light coating and you want build up around the rivets and that, but certainly over things like here, see how well you can see that, where we've got where it says US Army, perhaps you can see it all coming through there now, where the wash is working quite well. Certainly that the decals now have blended in to the point where by the time we put our final very dead coat over the top, you won't be able to see that. So we're just going to work our way around absolutely everywhere, moisten occasionally, and then just give it a bit of a rub as you go. Just be careful on those decals, because obviously we don't want to have any accidents with them tearing and lifting off, and because they're on quite an abrasive surface, we don't want to be breaking them at this point. So I'll just get all this off. Okay, so there's the wash basically all off. Now we've still got some big areas in there, but we're not too worried about that. Our next thing we want to do is we're going to try and make some little watermarks. Now for that, we're going to take a little bit of thinners with a clean bottle top, just something so I can tip on it. Okay, we're just putting some thinners onto the top of a lid like that. Okay, now how many times if you've seen helicopters, but basically when they've had some maintenance-y type things on there, you get sort of the watery mark flow around. Now obviously this is thinners, so you do have to be careful, but all we're going to do is just going to touch it in recesses and in little joins and lines and things like that, and let it flow. Now the thing is, because it's acrylic, it's going to slightly eat into everything it touches, and then I'm hoping it'll then, flow around and join up with other little areas of capillary action where it's happening and various things, and it'll give us that sort of watery, wet look when things have had a wash down and various bits and pieces. So we just pick out, random sort of panels and areas and things like that, and just give them a light rub and let the thinners do all the work. Now, because obviously there's wash on here as well, it's going to sort of soak into that and it'll darken that bit up, and it's all just little techniques we're just trying to do to give it that sort of the look, that sort of certain look that helicopters have and really only they have. So if we bring you in a bit, show you what we're going to do here. I'll say we've got this back area here, so what we're going to do, just put a bit of thinners down there, a bit of thinners around there, perhaps around this axis. Just, we don't want to hang around anywhere particularly long because we don't want it to be flowing all over the place. But we're certainly just trying to give it that effect of wetness, or dried when they get wet and then they dry, and various bits and pieces. So you get like that. Now as they dry, as it's doing on this side, we're leaving behind those watermarks which normally we want to get rid of. But hopefully they'll darken up as well and just be a touch darker than your normal ones, as you see. Now also what we're going to do in a moment, we're going to pop round with the airbrush and just do some little dark areas, some little light areas, and basically just breaking it all up. And because we're going to be going over the top of everything, it should just blend it all in then and give us that faded and worn look, and that's what we're after. Okay, so in here now we've got a mix of 50-50 between the pre-thinned Valero, so really it's down to about 25%, and we can just do nice little sharp lines like this now. And all we're going to do is just pick out little areas all over, just to darken them up. Remember, it's got to be a wettest mix because we need this to blend. Because we want nice little smoky, dark things going on, if you know what I mean. So like down from these engines, obviously where the wash blows down, we're just gonna misting over the top just to darken it up, perhaps that little area there. Certainly on these back panels and walkways, we're just literally on top of the engines, just walking a mist of dark all over everywhere, just breaking it up, just to darken it a tad around any joins and cracks and crevices. Perhaps where the actual wash is lying and you can see it still there, just give it a little spray over the top and it'll just darken it up. So you'll notice that the wash will disappear and you won't see it, and it will leave you with a dark colour behind. And that's all we're doing here. So as I say, if you've got an area perhaps where the wash is in there and it's a bit dark and not nice and various bits and pieces, then you can just pop over it. Just remember, don't hang around too far on it. We're just trying to mist a layer over and darken down. The white decals certainly give them a bit of a spray around the gun, the wheel hubs, anywhere where you think it would happen. Gearbox, access doors, things like that. And just try and keep it random. Don't hang around in an area too long. Check the suspension there. Yeah, don't hang around in the area too long because we don't want to stick. There we go. Okay, let's do a bit under here on the bottom. Usual thing, last mist right over everything, and there we go, we're out. Okay, so that's on there now and dried. Literally, I've just cleaned out the airbrush and done anything else. Right, haven't shaken this bottle. It's been stood for 24 hours basically, and it's the varnish. Okay, so all we're going to do is tip it neat into the colour cup. Check our flow. Okay, and we're just going to give this a spray right the way over. Now, because this is neat, make sure your air pressure is very, very high, otherwise you're not going to be going anywhere. Let's do the underside. And all we're doing is just giving this a dead flat coat, knocking back that shine and turning it into a helicopter. Now obviously if you put on a really heavy thick coat, it will lay flat on here and it will certainly be more of a satin finish than it will a flat. The further away you do this, and because obviously it's neat, the flatter it's going to come out and the more deader finish you'll get. So make sure your air pressure is well up. We're at 35-40 psi maximum here, and this is neat. So all we'll do that, and obviously I'm just going to spray the top of the rotor head as well. Get that done. And the tail rotor set as well, just to deaden it off. Whilst I've got some spray. Okay, come back to it. Dusty coat over the top. Okay, everywhere. Don't forget to the underside. Give those tyres a good spray as well. And there we go, that's done. We're going to clean out the airbrush now, get it all cleaned up, and then we can get all the final parts on, and then we can start unmasking it and getting all those little aerials and bits and pieces on as the final touch.